Hello, everyone. I hope you had an excellent winter vacation, wherever it was, wherever you did. I hope you had a good time doing it. This is it's our third year together. My goodness gracious, we're still untacked mode right now for weeks 1, 2, and 3, but 4, 5, and 6 will be together, and I'm super duper excited for that. I think your academic career is progressing well, and I hope we can progress it even further this semester. This is a new class for me. Professor Yoon taught it before, but he's visiting Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas this year. And so I have the responsibility of English education through technology, and while also being an untacked class. So it's going to be a fun time, but it'll be interesting enough. And so I hope you're excited. I'm excited. This week will be bog standard introductions, what we can expect, what we can expect from each other, and all those exciting things. I've been thinking about this because of our age difference and about when you started school. Something to think about is how much technology has affected education so much, and especially with language learning and things that are very normal now. 20 years ago, they were revolutionary, or 30 years ago, they're revolutionary. Television, how having TV video in the classroom was quite a revolution at the time. This semester, we're going to look at some different technologies and how they are used, how they can be used for language learning, and how we can use them in our lessons in the future. We'll be looking at several different kinds of technology, most of them computer programs based, but some of them more practical, and they'll be interesting to take a look at and how we can have it. We're going to be in untacked mode. This will make it difficult for us to talk to each other. So we're going to work on presenting and discussing. For this class, we are going to have a Discord channel for us to have what I like to call response video. Every week, a few of us are going to make a response video, post it on YouTube, post that link into Discord, and then the rest of us can look at and discuss the video. And each week will be a different question, different topic. The response videos can just simply be filmed with your camera, easy peasy, lickety split, all those fun things. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. All right, my name is still John Harrison, and you're still you, hopefully. If you have questions over eClass, I think still the best way. Email jharrison@cune.ac.kr. If you have problems, you can text me, but, rather you not. When you email or text, please make sure you write your name, your grade, your major, and class in the message so I know who I'm responding to and can better answer. But still, the Q&A section on eClass is the best way for you to ask a question, just like you raising your hand and asking a question in the classroom. eClass has that. You can ask your question, not have to put your name, to be anonymous. It could be the wind asking, and I can answer the question, and everyone can see and share in the knowledge. If you email or text me, you can expect an answer by the end of the next day. Sooner, but definitely by the end of the next day. Don't expect immediate answers at 2 or 3 a.m. I'm old and I sleep. Requirements. You were expected to attend every class as expected, to participate, have a positive attitude, have interest, take interest, and be ready to make mistakes and try new things. Exciting stuff like that. All usual things. Of course, with the discussion class, part of the class, that's going to be a bit different. That's what will be on Discord. That's what I want to try it out. How grading works. Now, in your first year, we had the university enforced the grading curve. So 20% of students could get A, 20% of students had to get C's. Last year, in your second year, we didn't have to do that. This year, I don't know. So it's something that we need to be aware of. But as soon as I know, I can let you know, and we can all know together. For this class, I'm going to use a progressive grading scale, and that you start from 0 and build yourself up. And so it's something to bear in mind. The average effort, if something is quite normal, a normal grade is 75% C. So please bear that in mind. If you just do the minimum requirements, they are called minimum requirements. And so for every project, we'll have a list of examples of what would an A grade be, what would a B grade be, what would a C grade be, D grade, a rubric to help us better understand effort levels are. And for the class discussion, for participation, that ended up hurting some of us more than it should have before. So I urge you to be more active in class discussions. Attendance is 10% of your grade, and attendance is important, of course, but it's quite expected. Make sure that you're ready for class on time, and that when we start class, you're not in the restroom or on the way to the classroom, and you're still late. And that doesn't kill your grade, but it does affect it. Probably going to have a few Zoom classes where we'll all be on together. We'll schedule those well in advance, but it is a technology that we need to use. When we have Zoom classes, it is important that you, with your smiling face, are in front of the camera, that your camera is on, that your microphone is working, and that I don't see just a blank wall. That's not helpful to anyone. So if I, the instructor, can't see you present, then I can't count you as present. And then, you're not really in there. Now, officially in the program, you're logged in, right? But you have to remember that we keep recordings of all the Zoom classes as well. It's something to be aware of. Please remember that we live in the year 2021 now. It can be expected that you know how basic technology of phone and video conferencing works, and know how to turn on your camera. You're not my grandfather, who also knows how to use Zoom, by the way. Make sure your things work. You can't claim ignorance anymore. Participation, this is a big chunk, and I want to emphasize this. I made it a bit bigger. 30%. This is your discussion, being active team members, talking to each other. That's, talking to each other on eClass in the discussion forum or on Discord in the discussion rooms. That's 30% of your grade. So don't just say one word, say K, and log off. That's not good enough. So make sure that you're participating. Quizzes. We're going to have weekly quizzes of some kind. Nothing too difficult or time consuming, but I've found that with these video lectures, students don't actually pay attention 100% of the time. They might play the video, but play the video without sound on, things like that. So the quizzes are there to help make sure that we are paying attention. Students have not learned a single thing the entire semester before the end of the class. So I don't expect any big problems, but weekly quizzes on eClass, you'll need to be aware of those. 20% of the grade. The rest will be projects. We're going to make presentations and proposals and micro classes about these different technologies and how we can use them to help our lessons, or to help make lessons more interactive or better, and what's good. And you're going to have to evaluate the technology and what's good about it or what's bad about it. We'll get more into this as we go along, but projects and the micro teaching is still important, because that's, after all, why we're all here. So what are we going to cover? Some of the things we'll cover: LMS system, learning management system. Here at Gyode, we use eClass, but there's many other platforms we use. Video conferencing systems. Here at Gyode, we have to use Zoom. For my other jobs, I use WebEx and Kaltura, and there's Google Hangouts. There's other platforms, and they each have their own advantages and disadvantages that exist. We're also going to talk about gamification of education. Right? We'll talk about that, gamification, and how we can use it for our classes, and especially technology gamification. For weeks 4, 5, and 6, we're going to talk about VR and AR, and that will be arts and crafts, because I have an idea. We're going to make VR goggles, and we're going to have a fun time doing it. So I'm excited. Untacked learning tools as well. There's different apps that are very interesting to use, and then also tools we can use for task-based learning and how we can better apply those in the classroom and out of the classroom. All right, expectations. We've got all these wonderful things. You'll need to be active in class. No worries. Regular quizzes. No worries. We'll have video lectures and Zoom lessons. You'll know well in advance when we have a Zoom lesson. No worries. We'll have reading reports, and that's the phrase I used, and that every week a few students will need to make a short video presenting an idea and reporting on what they thought, and the rest of us will need to discuss those in Discord. I'd like to take a moment and talk about an example from the commercial world, well, from the academic and the commercial world. And there's some applications, some very clear applications for us in the academic and educational world. And it has to go with an overall theme that we have in TESOL or EFL, etc. There is no perfect English, only perfect Englishes or Englishese, depending on how you say it. And this is a variation of a famous saying called, there is no perfect pasta sauce, only perfect pasta sauces. The original was, there is no perfect Diet Pepsi, only perfect Diet Pepsis. And what does that mean? Well, we'll go explain it a bit. Sometimes in the late 1970s, so 1,000 years ago, before I was born, Howard Moskowitz, he's a Harvard psychologist, was commissioned to experiment and find the perfect level of sweetness for Diet Pepsi. That is, what would be the perfect Diet Pepsi taste that appealed to the largest audience. So you need to find the number one, most successful, best flavor, level of sweetness for most people. Find the largest audience. There's a problem with it, though. When the data came back, it was scattered beyond belief. There's no bell curve. There's no perfect sweetness. There was no meaningful information. The answer was that there was no perfect level, only perfect levels. There was multiple answers, not one answer, but multiple. But Pepsi didn't care. Pepsi wanted their one answer, and so they didn't care. But other companies did. There's a company called Prego. They make pasta sauce. Back then, in the late 1970s, early 1980s, they were second place to another company called Ragu. We sometimes see them on the shelves here in Korea. Now, at the time, there was one kind of pasta sauce, regular traditional style, just the red marinara sauce. That was your only option. So it's not like today. But back then, Prego was second place to Ragu. But the problem was they couldn't figure out why. They spent a lot of money on advertising. They spent a lot of money on taste testing and in what they call blind taste tests, where people don't know which is which. Most people preferred Prego over Ragu, but they still bought Ragu. So something was wrong and they couldn't figure it out. So Prego wanted to find an answer and see how they could become number one in the pasta sauce industry. So Moskowitz, he did the similar test where he didn't, he brought his knowledge of that if people didn't prefer one level of sweetness for Diet Pepsi, well, what about pasta sauce? So he made 45 different kinds of pasta sauce, and he tested it out. And each one varied in each way. And so we have level of sweetness, level of saltiness, garlic, chunkiness, spiciness, all these things. How thick it is or how thin it is. What he found us that Americans fell into three groups. Some people liked the plain, regular, degular spaghetti sauce. Some people liked chunky spaghetti sauce. And some people liked spicy spaghetti sauce. The big information was that there was no chunky sauce on the market. It wasn't sold anywhere. Yet 30% of Americans highly preferred it. So there's a market there. There's an audience there that nobody knew existed. Now, the obvious answer is that, well, nowadays not as much, but back in the old days, people made pasta sauce at home. It was homemade, and so their mom made it or their grandmother made it or what have you. And each one had their own variation of it, so it has to go with that. But Prego found out that they were, the phrase is, leaving money on the table. In that, yeah, they were, and so they made chunky spaghetti sauce. And they made a lot of money of it. $600 million in the 1970s. Now you think about it. If you go to any grocery store now, you go to the E-Mart or Home Plus or Lotte Mart in Chuncheon, you have all these choices. So nowadays they'll find it out, and even if it's a gimmick like the the Pamat checks, and they don't really taste like pots. I was disappointed, but that's now they're trying to find every segmental part of the audience to make more money. On eClass as well, you will get your invite links to the new Discord server. Everything will be super duper. Remember to use, we can use private YouTube videos, or rather not private, but unlisted, so that we can see it, and we don't need to be worried about privacy issues as much. Technology is a tool, but it's hard to know what will pan out, what will be helpful and not helpful. If I'm thinking about your age, you started school, what, 2005, 2006? That's when I was graduating university. PowerPoint was like the hot new thing then. Now, everybody is expected to know it, but we have smart screens, smartphones, obviously. Smartphones had huge things. We have much easier audio and video. We have access. YouTube is a shocking bonanza of help for that. We're going to look a bit further into the farther future, what people are developing, and the near future, but also we'll be looking at some of the sidetracks, the failures, the dead ends of technology. A few years ago, they were supposed to have English teaching robots for schools in Korea. They were supposed to try, and that's an example we'll look at to see what happened with it. If you have any questions, please make sure to ask me on eClass, and then we can all answer them together. All right. Have an excellent week. Stay safe and healthy, and goodbye.
How do you measure the achievement of a nation? If you want to know how we're really doing, where do you look?
Maybe that's a question with more than just one answer. Maybe you have to take one thing at a time and ask how we're handling that problem. Take food, for example. That's an important problem. How are we doing there?
Take a look at our farms. The quantity and quality of our output surpass anything ever seen before.
And how about industrial production?
That's probably where we do the most remarkable job of all. This is the kind proud of our performance as builders and makers of goods.
How about transportation?
The same story, really. More than 200,000 miles of railroads, 300-mile-an-hour planes by the thousands, 40 million trucks. Or look what we've done with health. Physical well-being tremendously improved. Life expectancy at the highest level in history by far. And how have we managed to do all this? We provided tools for the job. Farm tools to multiply our output per acre. Giant machines to multiply our output per man. When it comes to moving people and goods, we have the tools to do it on a grand scale. We have every right to be proud of our performance in these areas of our national life. But what about the education of our children?
Let's look at that problem. Have we the same right to be proud of what we are doing for them? Every school day of the year, 30 million young people enter the classrooms of our schools. Never before in our history has the school population been so big. Never before have we had greater need for knowledge, or wisdom, or understanding. Today's school generation must be trained to face a complex, rapidly changing world. Think of it a moment.
It is a world that has seen the coming of the atomic bomb and all the problems that go with it. It is a world in which supersonic speeds are commonplace. It is a world that in a span of little more than 20 years saw this, and then this. It has seen the first attempt in history at world organization, and the fate of a second attempt still hangs in the balance. It has seen extreme economic depression and high economic prosperity. It is a world that has revealed whole new areas of knowledge. It is a world of new sensations, new excitements, new distractions. The thrills of motion pictures, the tense drama of radio, the vivid presentations of television.
So much to be learned by so many in so little time. That is the problem.
And what money, manpower, and tools are we providing for this job?
This is a question we must address to every aspect of the problem. School buildings, equipment, teachers' loads, teachers' salaries, the training of teachers, and the tools for learning. The supremely important job of teaching deserves the best we can provide. More books and better ones. More audiovisual materials and better ones. More teaching materials of all kinds, each suited to a special task of communication. For education is communication. It is the communications problem we consider here. We want to explore the tools of audiovisual education, and especially the educational motion picture.
Why try to explain the workings of a gasoline engine with words and gestures alone, when films can do it this way?
The four cycles are intake, compression, explosion, exhaustion.
Why depend entirely upon verbal explanations and static drawings to portray life in foreign lands, when motion pictures can do this?
Work very hard. Everyone must help with the work if the camp is to be ready by nightfall.
We must have books to teach the great events of history. But why use books alone when films can help so much to make these events come alive?
So many needing to learn so much in so little time.
How do these new audiovisual tools measure up to this job? Well, let's see. Here is the classroom of Miss Mildred Mahoney of the University of Chicago Laboratory School. To most of these primary grade children, farm life had been vague and remote. Then one day they saw a film about a fair.
Places in the line. At last the choice is made. The judge's work is done. He has picked the winners. Well, the champion's blue ribbon goes to a girl. Johnny gets a ribbon too. His calf is a winner.
Here are some of the activities that grew out of the common experience of the class. Making a model is only one activity growing out of the film showing. Books especially designed to go with the film help the pupils to read about the experience with ease and with understanding.
Johnny goes to the barn. He shines the horns of his calf.
Besides using the film readers, the pupils took a great deal of interest in other books dealing with the animals, the farm, and other things related to what they saw in the film. Some wanted to put the story into their own words. Some drew pictures. Just as these city youngsters went to a fair by means of films, they can use films to gain rich experience in a wide variety of other subject areas. The world of physical things. How do gears work? The world of science and technology. How is nylon made? The world of living things, young animals. The rich past of colonial times. The world of the arts. How do you draw a good picture? The world of handicrafts. How does a loom work? And the world of people. Young people like themselves in Norway, in England, and young people in Italy. These children are learning to understand the world they live in through films.
The General Science class of Mr. P.L. Whitaker, University School, Bloomington, Indiana.
Now we have a pretty good list of questions. Do you think of any other points that we ought to see in this film on television, Pamela?
What makes the electrons, or whatever they're called, come together and form the shape for the picture? That's what I don't understand.
Good. Let's add that. What makes the shape or pattern of the picture? Is there anything else? Well, then let's see the film. Don, will you close the shades?
At the base of the tube is a filament. Fitting over the filament is the cathode, a cylinder coated with earth oxides. Around the cathode is a shield called the control grid. Next are two anodes.
This is only one of many science films from a comprehensive library which includes motion pictures on physics, and the use of films has yielded rich returns in promoting interest, clarifying difficult concepts, and increasing the effectiveness of teaching.
The history class of Mr. John Hamburg, Edgerton, Wisconsin Public Schools.
It is therefore that the older I grow, the more apt I am to doubt my own judgment and to pay attention to the judgment of others. Sir, I cannot help expressing a wish that every member of the convention who may still have objections to it would, with me, doubt a little of his infallibility and to make manifest our unanimity, put his name to this instrument.
Any comments?
Yes, Bob.
I guess I was surprised to see Franklin so willing to admit that he might be wrong sometimes.
Anyone want to comment on that?
Well, I think the film makes clear from the beginning that Franklin was a scientist as well as a statesman.
You know, that's a very impressive thing about the founders of our government. They were men of really broad interests.
To Mr. Hamburg's class, men like Franklin, Jefferson, and many, many others are not just vague historical figures, but vivid personalities they have met in a very meaningful sense through films. And so, too, with their entire study of American history. Films give it a new dimension, films, textbooks, and other materials reinforcing each other. When the period of the movement westward was being studied, this film dealing with the Second World War. After that, a film on the United Nations.
The independent member states of the United Nations seek by means of these 5 great bodies to maintain the peace.
Discussions like this are typical of the interest that films help create.
I don't feel you can talk about degrees of democracy and despotism like the film said. Either you have a democracy or you haven't.
That's what I think, too. If it's just a matter of degree, then all systems are the same.
That's not what the film said. The point was that you can't just go around using words like democracy and despotism without knowing what they mean.
That's right. One of the first things any dictator tries to do is fool the people with words they don't understand.
And get all excited about. Some people can't even exercise.
If I may get in a word here, there are 2 distinctly different types of questions involved. One is a question of fact. What did the film actually say? The other is a question of opinion. Should we believe what the film said? We ought to be able to settle the first question rather easily.
Can we see the film again?
Shall we see it again? Charlie, are you all set?
The 6th grade class of Mrs. Bessie Southcombe of the Cincinnati, Ohio Public Schools.
A call for it.
On another occasion, the film selected had to do with personal hygiene.
She washes her face at least every morning and evening. She rubs gently all over her face.
And then there was the film on the teeth. Film on caring for the hair.
100 strokes or more. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But it's worth taking the time for.
With materials like these to work with, Mrs. Southcombe's class was able to save costly hours of classroom time in their study of health problems. These are not isolated examples. Similar cases of effective film use can be cited in all areas of the school program and at all age levels.
For instance, to the art class of Mr. Harlan E. Hoffa of the Evanston, Illinois schools comes the skilled artist.
The students have the experience of seeing a great artist at work.
The engineering class of Professor Richard H. Cole of Northwestern University. P.T. of the University of Chicago gets a new insight into child development.
The importance of the child's questions and how they are answered. And for adult groups like this, the films provide a common experience for a group discussion. Films are only part of a broad movement in the audiovisual field. Film strips, records, magnetic recordings, models, charts, radio and television are also new tools for enlightenment.
To promote a wider and more effective use of these tools, states, counties, and cities have appointed professional audio-visual directors to provide leadership in the field. Universities have established centers for teacher training and research in audio-visual education. The U.S. Office of Education and other civilian government agencies have training film programs. Industry and the armed forces continue to use the audio-visual tools that have been so effective in the speedy training of large numbers of men and women. Mr. Clarence Randall, president of a large steel corporation, said,
I hold a deep conviction that training films are an important aid to the development of education in industry. They are direct, they are inexpensive, and they teach people not only the how, but the why of doing things the safe way and the smart way.
Admiral Halsey of the Armed Forces said,
when time was precious, the Navy turned to the medium of the motion pictures for technically accurate and educationally sound instruction.
Research centers such as this one at Pennsylvania State College are constantly adding to our knowledge of films and their effective use. A growing number of city school systems have central points for the distribution of films, and more than ever before, individual schools are fighting to get the facilities they need to make the use of films and other audiovisual materials a regular part of classroom instruction. Yet even with all this, most students in American classrooms do not have the opportunities offered by regular film use. We must not assume that the new media of communication will answer all our problems, or that they will make the teacher less important. On the contrary, well-trained teachers will be needed more than ever before.
But the teacher's effectiveness will increase with the proper use of films, just as the latest advances in medical equipment increase the effectiveness of the doctor, just as the farmer's effectiveness is increased through the power tools of modern agriculture, just as our giant productive system is made more effective through the use of a modernized transportation system.
The children learn to make the school years as profitable and productive as possible. Are we solving this vital problem with the best facilities and finest resources at our command?
How do you measure the achievement of a nation?
If you want to know how we're really doing, take a look at our schools. For on what we're doing here and in schools throughout the world rests not only our future fate, but perhaps the very fate of civilization itself.